Hey guys and gals, this is Len with Len's Guide Service. We're going to be fishing some fish that are in a pre-spawn mode today. We've been on some pretty good fish, some 11 to 14 inch pre-spawn. We're going to be using jigs and minnows. We're back in the coves, but not all the way back. These fish haven't made it back yet to that 2 to 3 foot of water. Most of the fish are going to be hanging about that 6 to 12. Water temperature right now is running about 58 to 61 degrees. Most of the bigger and better fish are biting right now. Seems like these bigger fish always know when to come in a little earlier than the smaller fish. Normally when you get into this first couple of weeks of pre-spawn fish, you get the biggest and best fish in the system. I'm going to do a guide trip for a guy today, and we're gonna film this pre-spawn fishing. What we're going to be fishing is like 45-degree banks. Not necessarily visible cover, but there's some kind of cover down there, like say about 6 to 10 foot. They're hanging around that brush. It seems to be a good staging area for them before they finally make that step up to about that 2 to 4 foot. So we're gonna whack them today, and hopefully we'll get some good footage, and we're gonna have a great day. It's supposed to be in the mid 70s. We're the last couple of days of March. It seems like this last month we've had just ungodly weather here. It's been in the 80s, lows down in the middle 50s, so our water temperatures came up fairly quick. Normally we don't catch these fish till about the 3rd week of April, but everything's running about 2 to 3 weeks early, and the best fish in the system, from what I know at 14 years of guiding, is they always seem to go quicker than the littler fish. Seems like every week you get into this, once these big fish show up, it seems like every week after that the fish get about 1 inch smaller in size. So when you get to the end of that 4 to 5 week period of spawn, it seems like the little fish show up that last couple of weeks, and the big fish always seem to know what to do. They go in first, they get their business done, and then the smaller and lesser fish start to show up after that. Maybe that's why they stay big. So, all right, well, let's head to the lake and see what we can do with them. Hey guys and gals, we finally made it to where we're going to be fishing. We're about midway back in the coves. The fish are not running shallow. Any day now they're going to be pulling up, but for right now we're going to try to catch these fish out in that 6 to 12 foot of water. I got a guide trip going today, and this is a buddy of mine, John. We're going to try to get a couple of limits here and show you what we're doing. What we got here is we're using a 9-foot crappie pole, and we've got a white plain jig head, and we're using minnows. And what we're doing is we're running that point of that hook all the way into that fish's mouth and coming out right behind the back of the head, and we're keeping that minnow just nice and straight on that jig like that. Okay, and that way when the fish come up and get it, they can't tear it off as easy if you would hook them through the lips. So real simple rig, plain white jig head, and a minnow. And what we're going to do is we're going to just pitch these banks We're going to stay out about 4 foot or so from the bank, and then we're going to let our bait just fall right down that contour. Most of these banks in here are going to be 45-degree angled banks, and when the sun gets up a little bit and starts getting on these sunny banks, these fish will get a little more active as the water temperature rises. So now we've got some underwater stuff here. There's a big tree that lays in here, and the limbs lay out this way. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pitch, try not to pitch over the limbs, but we're going to try to pitch either right on top of them or just come off on this deep side. I got a feeling that the fish are going to be out here a little deeper this morning just because the water temperature's cooled down a little bit, and we're waiting for it to warm up as the day progresses. Okay? Now that fish was out in about 10 foot and suspended over that treetop. Good quality fish, about 10 inches long. That'd be our first one. It seems like these fish in the morning, you know, they're not really hitting the bait hard. They just seem to just kind of stop the line. We use this yellow line so that we can detect what's going on. A lot of times you'll just, rather than getting a thump, you know, out of that fish, what you'll do is get a relaxed line. And when that relaxed line sits on top of that water, that's when you want to knock them fish pretty good. There, John got one. Sometimes it takes a few minutes to get these fish to really start biting. Sometimes you can get that whole school fired up, you know, by catching them first couple of fish, and also you kind of get a feel for where the fish are, if they're out a little bit or they're in a little bit. Big flat rock there over to this tree. There's just a bunch of limbs that stick out into that. I don't let it get too deep, but you're over that limb. There you go. Right over the limb. Come right over that limb. Ooh, that might be a good one. Keeper. Yes, we can do. Now that one thumped it. That one thumped it. Well, better fish there. Better fish. These are mostly male fish. We're catching a few females, but the males and stuff are starting to pull back in here, and they're starting to set up where they want to make their beds. These female fish really aren't too far behind them. Most of the time the males will move in first, kind of stake out the territory in here, and then the females will move right in after them. But good quality fish. You know, we've been averaging a good 11-inch average, you know, on 30 fish if I got one guy, and 45 fish if I got two guys in the boat. So for Mark Twain, that's not a bad average, I'll tell you. And getting some good ones too. kind of staying out away from this bank and pitching to the bank. You know, we're covering a water column here that is about, you know, 4 foot where we're pitching, down to about 12 to 15 foot. My boat's setting in about 20 foot of water. And you know, when you pitch that jig out there, you're covering a good water column, you know, with the contour of this bank. You're covering that water column from about 4 foot out to about 12. And you know, if you got a cork on, you know, and you got it set at about 2 foot, you know, you can only fish a maximum of 2 foot deep. So, you know, when I'm searching for these fish before they get on the bank, you know, I like to pitch this jig in there and let it come down that contour, and you put that jig in so many fish's territory that you know, you're not limiting yourself to just a 2 foot deal with a cork. And right now they're hitting this minnow a lot harder and a lot stronger than they are just a regular jig. Seems like the jig bite right now is they're just kind of just bumping it. They're not really taking it, but the minnow, they seem to be, you know, swallowing this minnow. So we got to remember that this time of the year we haven't had any kind of a hatch of any kind. You know, our shad right now that these fish are feeding on are shad that's been left over from last year. So these shad are about, you know, 2 to 3 inches long, and it's just one of those deals where you kind of match the hatch. There, John got a good one.
How better?
And when you find these schools of fish, you know, it can almost just be a fish every pitch, every cast.
Toad. We're in Toadsville.
Get these fish all excited, and it's kind of like a competition thing down there. Right now these fish are in the feeding mode. They're not too worried about the spawn yet. They're just coming back here to just find their place where they want to be, get close to it, but they're still in that deeper water column. And until our water reaches probably about that lower to middle 60s, you know, these fish won't go up to the bank. We're maintaining a lot of clarity right now. We haven't had any of those, you know, torrential spring rains or anything, and you know, we've got water clarity of about 1 foot to 1.5 foot, which is normal here. We're a highly stained lake here on Mark Twain, and you know, generally these fish will spawn in about 1 foot to 5 foot of water, but most of the time, you know, these fish will come back in these coves and get on these little drops, and if you got a piece of brush in there or anything you can tickle around, it's even better.